Hey, Dale Walksler here from the Wheels Through Time Museum. Of course, we're here to talk about rare Indian hill climbers today. And of course, I could spend hours talking about these two motorcycles, but we only have a few minutes. These bikes are actually layered in history. 1928 Indian hill climber, 1939 Indian hill climber. What an incredibly rare bike this is. A61-1 Indian Altoona 61 cubic inch alcohol burning hill climber in completely original condition. Some great features. The Altoona side valve motor, certainly the front forks, hill climb style handlebars, 2 kill buttons, little reminder on the steering dampener to add fuel. And of course they used alcohol in these, so it really wasn't regular gasoline. The engine itself is a real piece of beauty. Ball bearing crankshaft, ball bearing cams, polished crank, polished flywheels, and the bike is absolutely purpose built for hill climbing. This chassis, the frame, certainly probably less than 6 or 8 of these ever built. Some of them had the 80 cubic inch motor. This one is 1000 cc, therefore the serial number A61-1, alcohol, 61 cubic inch, serial number 1. You know, here's what we know about the history of this machine. It was sold new to Guy Urquhart in 1928. It was actually raced all the way to 1948. There's an interesting picture on the cover of the Motorcyclist magazine, 1948, of Floyd Emdy actually crashing this bike. Interestingly, there's actually 2 photos of the same crash from different angles, and of course Floyd was a Daytona road race winner in, I think, 1948 also. Took a little chance at hill climbing, crashed this motorcycle, and didn't tear it up too bad. You know, recently I had the opportunity to have this engine apart, and what a beautiful piece of work it is on the inside. Polished crankshaft, bronze cam cover, bronze intake manifold. Really one of the coolest things when I peel this motor down is the gear that drives the cam. It's called the pinion gear. Actually had Altoona stamped on it. The name Altoona came from the famous board track in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and this type of engine Jim Davis rode actually over 120 miles an hour on the 2-mile track in Altoona, Pennsylvania in the board track era. Subsequently, they dubbed the same hill climb motor the Altoona motor, or the Altoona hill climber. You know, a lot of folks who come to Wheels Through Time and look at the hill climb hill don't really understand what these bikes are. Of course, a short explanation, a few of the pictures always tell, but they always wonder about the chains. And of course, the chains on the rear of a hill climber made for digging that dirt, climbing those hills. And chains were used from the earliest days of hill climbing. They still use them today. You know, over the years, classes in hill climbing have changed, and of course, in the early days, the 1928 Guy Urquhart bike was a Class A bike. That means it was built by the factory and raced by a professional rider. Jumping fast forward to this motorcycle, which is a 1939 B Scout, that's the B-class hill climbing. It was a little less stringent than the A-class. Almost anybody could run Class B. Of course, to have a factory hill climbing bike such as this was quite a privilege. Only 18 of these bikes ever built. And this particular bike, raced out of Guy Urquhart's shop, also in San Diego, has an interesting history. Mouse Mulatech raced this motorcycle quite successfully for a very short period of time. I think he only ran for 2 seasons, and the bike is in incredibly great condition, which tells me one thing. Mouse was probably a great rider because he didn't flip this bike, tear it up, bend the handlebars, mash the back fender. I did notice one scratch on the back fender, but the bike is in incredible original condition. Original tires, 45 cubic inch Scout motors, serial numbered as a factory hill climber, and throughout this motorcycle is just as good as any hill climbing bike as I've ever seen. You know, FCI 18, that's this motorcycle, recently found its way to Wheels Through Time, and the previous owner is a good friend of mine, and he had actually taken this bike out on the Antique Motorcycle Club America circuit, had it judged to really prove its provenance. I think our friend Robin Markey, who's probably the premier, really the expert in Indian history, I think he gave this bike high marks, 98 points out of 100, and the bike's in original condition. So certainly not a restored bike, still received high marks, a real testimony to this motorcycle, which is really one of the best surviving hill climbers in America. You know, when I found the Guy Urquhart A61-1 bike, this helmet came with it. So did the box, and of course the box, incredibly rare. It's got Indian decals all over it, Guy Urquhart's little sticker, and what was in this box? Bits and pieces and spare parts and sprockets and carburetors and all the stuff you take to your track. Along with that came the trumpet, equally marked, Indian decals on it everywhere, and I can only assume this trumpet was actually used for announcing races at the hill climb. Another great story here at the Time Machine, 2 rare Indian hill climbers, both in original running condition, both of the same provenance. And it's really a pleasure to bring them to you. Hope you enjoy them.